So welcome everyone to the Women in Leadership panel discussion. My name is Mallory Rubeck, and I'm the Wellness Manager at Gator Care. I will be your moderator for today's event, which is hosted by Gator Care. So Gator Care provides free health and wellness programs for UF and UF Health employees, like this virtual panel today. If you enjoy today's session, I encourage you to sign up for our wellness newsletter so that you can stay up to date with our offerings. Abby, our wellness supervisor, will go ahead and send that link in the chat. And again, our panelists, I invite you to go ahead and put your video on. Okay. Now, the topics we'll cover today are essential for fostering a sustainable and successful career. And we are really excited to hear from our esteemed panelists who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience. So we'll start by introducing our panelists. We are honored to have with us today Dr. Laura Greenhaw, Dr. Haley Trainey, Dr. Min Lehman, and Eileen Nguyen. I'm going to read their bios for you all so you can see their backgrounds, and we'll get started with our questions. So Dr. Laura Greenhaw earned a BS in agriculture with teacher certification from West Texas A&M University and an MS in agriculture education from Texas Tech University prior to teaching agriculture at Cooper High School in Abilene, Texas for 3 years. She returned to Texas Tech to earn a PhD in agricultural communications and education. From 2013 to 2019, she worked as an assistant professor of agricultural leadership in the School of Human Sciences at Mississippi State University. Since August 2019, she has worked at UF as an assistant professor of agricultural leadership in the Department of Agricultural Education and Communication. Throughout her 10+ years in higher education, Laura has taught undergraduate and graduate classes in leadership theory, volunteer development, moral leadership, and team leadership. While at Mississippi State, she developed and directed the Thad Cochran Agricultural Leadership Program, a 2-year-long leadership development program for agricultural professionals. Her research focuses on evaluating and improving leadership education and development in the post-secondary classroom, as well as in non-formal adult programs. She is passionate about building leadership capacity, particularly in agricultural, food, and natural resources industries, by providing research-based education and facilitating opportunities for experiential learning that help leaders try out the tools in their leadership toolbox. Laura is married to her husband, Andy, and they are proud parents of a 3-year-old Michael Henry and 2 cantankerous pups, Ginger and Scooby. As a family, they enjoy being active, traveling, cooking, and all things baseball. So we'll give a virtual round of applause for Laura Greenhaw. Next, we've got Dr. Haley Trainey. She is a leadership educator at Oregon State University. With a diverse background in teaching, research, and international development, Dr. Trainey focuses on building capacity in individuals and communities through innovative approaches in leadership and systems thinking. Her work spans leadership, agriculture, and education, emphasizing interdisciplinary collaboration to address complex challenges. Passionate about empowering others, Dr. Trainey inspires students and professionals to overcome obstacles, lead effectively, reclaim boundaries, and create meaningful change. Round of applause for Dr. Haley. Thank you for joining us. Next, we've got Dr. Min Lee Min. She's a seasoned healthcare leader with a proven track record of driving operational excellence and improving patient outcomes. With over 18 years of experience, she brings a deep understanding of complex healthcare systems and a passion for innovative solutions to improve care delivery. Her expertise lies in transforming healthcare delivery through strategic leadership and data-driven decision making. Her accomplishments include implementing cost savings initiatives, enhancing patient experience, and fostering a culture of high performance. As a skilled case manager and quality improvement specialist, she has successfully led teams to achieve measurable results in reducing readmissions, improving patient satisfaction, and optimizing resource utilization. A dedicated educator and mentor, she holds a doctorate in nursing practice with a focus on health systems leadership. Her commitment to lifelong learning is evidenced by her certifications as a board certified case manager and a certified professional in healthcare quality. Beyond her professional endeavors, she enjoys an active lifestyle, including running and biking. She finds fulfillment in spending quality time with her family. Dr. Lehman is a dynamic and results-oriented leader who's eager to contribute her expertise to a team focused on improving healthcare delivery and patient outcomes. Round of applause for Dr. Min as well. And finally, we have Eileen Nguyen. Eileen has been a nurse for 28 years. She began her career as a medical surgical nurse and soon developed a deeper interest that led her into the ICU. Over the years, she's specialized in trauma, emergency medicine, and neurosurgical medicine. In 2011, she relocated to Gainesville, Florida, where her journey continued to evolve. In 2021, Eileen had the privilege of assisting in the opening of a new medical ICU/IMC as the clinical leader. In 2023, she became the nurse manager of the unit, a role that has allowed her to make a significant impact on both patient care and staff development. Education is a passion of Eileen's, and she's proud to serve as an adjunct professor at Santa Fe College, where she teaches ADN students. She holds an MSN in nursing education, which has equipped her with the knowledge and skills to deliver exceptional, evidence-based care to her patients. This knowledge has allowed her to teach her staff, ensuring they are well prepared to provide the highest standard of care. Eileen is driven by a commitment to excellence and strives to foster a healthy culture within her unit. She believes that self and family should always come first and maintains an open door policy to support a family-centered environment for her staff. I'd like to provide another warm welcome to all of our panelists as they provide us with their knowledge and experience in leadership today. Now, today's discussion will cover 4 main topics: leadership, work-life balance and boundary setting, mental health, and wellness. Each topic will be discussed for about 15 minutes, followed by a Q&A session at the end where you can ask our panelists your questions. I ask that you please submit your questions through the Q&A function on this Zoom meeting, and we will address as many as we can towards the end. If you pre-submitted a question via the online form we sent, I also have a list of those questions that I will try to get to. If you have trouble finding the Q&A button on Zoom, you should be able to press the 3 dots that say more, or press Q&A if you see that as a button there. So Abby, our wellness supervisor, will be monitoring the chat for today. All right. Now, on that note, let's start with our first topic. All of our panelists have many years of leadership experience across a variety of settings, so let's hear from them. We will start with Min. So Min, as a woman, how do you define leadership? Tell us about your leadership journey and if you've had any hurdles to overcome with that journey.
Mallory, thank you so much for holding this webinar, and thank you for inviting all of us here. This is really exciting, And that kind of the reason why I find this so exciting kind of leads into your first question, defining leadership. So anyone can be a leader of some type, right? So I'm going to define great leadership. You have to want to develop others. You have to look outside of yourself, and you have to be kind of that natural mentor person. Leadership is many things, right? It is reaching outcomes, getting goals. But to me, what I find exciting is working as a team. And if you can be yourself and really show others how to work together as a team, I mean, the way I look at it, we spend so many hours of our life at work. Let's try to make it enjoyable while we do what we are here to do. So I would say defining great leadership involves the mentorship. You have to be empathetic. You have to want to work as a team, and you have to be willing to give credit to others and let others give in their input with whatever the task may be. My leadership journey, I worked as a cardiothoracic nurse, moved up to being a team lead or charge nurse, as we used to call it. And then I got into education. I was a manager of an outpatient clinic. And so I continued to grow from there. I took my time with my education. I did what was best to balance out my mental health, my family's well-being, and also working. So my goal is always to get things done, but to also enjoy the journey. So from there, I got into operations, and then from there, the director of operations, and now here. So what's important to know about the hurdles and what that experience was like is personally, I tend to focus very little on hurdles. I tend to not look at anything as a hurdle, including being a female, right? And that's kind of what this whole webinar is about, women in leadership. So do hurdles exist for certain reasons as male, female, what someone looks like, age? Yes, they do. But whatever you give attention to grows, right? Whatever you give a lot of focus on can become a problem if you let it. So for me, I think I never really focused on hurdles. I just expanded or took a pivot to another direction. So if you feel like you were in an interview or something happened, you can think of all the reasons why you weren't hired, right? You can think of, oh, it might have been because I look like this, I sound like this, I appear to be like this, they don't understand me. That should never be your thought. It should be, okay, that didn't work out, next. And if you can do that and also take that next brave step of reaching out to people that you see, this person is great. They seem to be a great leader. They seem to be someone that I would want to work for. Reach out, send them an email and say, hi, I'm just interested in meeting you. 15, 20 minutes. Do you have time to connect? So instead of focusing on the hurdles, I think you should expand your connections to be people that are like you. If you feel misunderstood or that you're not getting where you want to go, it's your job to make sure that you reach a wider audience.
Thank you, Min. I really like that advice. It sounds like your journey is like an organic one, right? Not trying too hard, just kind of letting things happen. And I really like your point of focusing on the things that you want to grow rather than the hurdles. So I think that's a really good point and really good advice. Thank you. Also, I'll invite the panelists, like if you guys have something that you'd like to add after each of the other panelist statements, you absolutely can, but I will prompt you as well. Eileen, I do have you next. I know that you've got a very strong nursing perspective and a lot of years as a nurse. So I want to know what your leadership journey has been like and maybe what advice you have for aspiring women leaders.
Well, first of all, thank you, Min. You actually took a lot of stuff, that I was going to say, definitely, being as a leader, just in general, not just being a woman leader, but just as being a leader, being, my leadership journey, I had a lot of mentoring. I had some very strong leaders that has guided me here, and they're still very active in my life. They are on my speed dial. Whenever I have questions, they are there for me. Especially since I am new into the management role here and in the leadership role. They're, my lifesavers, my lifelines that I have. If you had asked me, you asked me here about, how I got into the leadership role. If you had asked me maybe 15, 20 years ago, as a bedside nurse, would I ever go into management? I would have told you, no, I'm going to die at the bedside and work nights forever. I was never going to be a day shift walker or ever work in management. That was my thing. And then look at me now, I'm working days, 5 days a week and in management, and I absolutely love it. My biggest thing is that I try to lead by example. I believe that for my staff, I try to be out on the floor. I try to be active with my staff. I have no problems being in there. If there's a skill that somebody needs aid with, I'm in there and I'm teaching. You had mentioned, Min, about like with hurdles. I don't look at them as hurdles either. I look at them as opportunities for education. And if they don't know something, and if I don't know something, let's find the answer together. Education is key for anything. So I do believe that, some people call them hurdles, some people call them road bumps, speed bumps. There's growth. Let's all learn, let's all expand. With the leadership and education, I do try to encourage my staff and anybody I'm around to continue their educational path. If they decide that they want to stay as a bedside nurse, that is wonderful. I try to look into everybody. There are people who are wonderful educators. I will pick those people out and become preceptors for our newer nurses who are coming in. There are people who are born leaders. They are our charge nurses. So I try to take those people and foster them into those roles. And that's how my leadership role has become and how I continue with that. I work very close with our clinical leaders, with management from other units. We have a phenomenal management team here at Shands. We all work very well together and we learn from each other.
Thank you, Eileen. Some things that stuck out with yours was mentoring. We actually got a few questions that were pre-submitted with mentoring. So I think that we should go back to that topic at the end. And then also the leading by example. I think a lot of people have images of leaders and managers as kind of like telling people what to do and those sort of things. But I think if you have that mindset of when needed, have the boots on the ground, work with your team rather than telling them what to do, that's like a true leader. So I think that was a really great point. I would like to hear from Laura next because you work in a male-dominated field. So you've got that perspective. So tell us how you have navigated double standards that women often face when asserting authority compared to their male counterparts, and then anything else that you would like to add with your own leadership journey.
Yeah, so I would just echo the thanks for hosting this and for allowing me to be part of this. As you listened to my bio, you heard agriculture a lot, and so it's no surprise that I've kind of existed in a male-dominated world my whole life, really, growing up in the country, growing up in agriculture, but not really recognizing that mattered being a woman, because my dad had two girls, so we were never treated any differently one to the next. You use the term double standard, and that's a little bit of a loaded term, right? Feels a little bit icky. And so the more I have as an academic studied leadership and studied leaders and started to really distinguish between those two terms. And I think that for me has really helped in my journey and my understanding to differentiate where I live in this world of leadership. I think less about the individual roles. I think less about who is the leader, and I think more about the ship part of that, the relationship part of that, and how people on all sides are engaging in this goal attainment or goal pursuit that Min mentioned earlier. And I think one of the things that has really helped me to reframe, and you heard both Min and Eileen talk about, we don't think so much about barriers, or we try not to focus on barriers. And I don't think that I'm different. I think I definitely align with that perspective too. I think a lot in, being a woman that predominantly exists in a male-dominated profession, I have to reframe and think about implicit bias and this idea that from a leadership perspective, a lot of the characteristics that people naturally and have been conditioned to associate with men or a man are also a lot of the characteristics that we are conditioned to associate with leader. And what we've come to know through research and experience over the last half century, that there's really even been leadership research involving women happening, is that despite our perceptions of leader and kind of in alignment with leader characteristics with a male, that women and men are both effective leaders, right? And so I tend to focus, again, you heard Eileen talk about mentoring and leading by example and, being boots on the ground and next to the people that she is leading. And for me, it really is much more about that piece, that relationship, and how all people are contributing to the leadership, not just who the leader is or what that leader is doing.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for that perspective. I think that as we continue to answer these questions, we can talk about more specifically like what those qualities look like, whether it's a man or a woman, right? What are the qualities of like a true leader or leadership look like? So looking forward to that. And finally, with this first question, Haley, we'd love to hear from you. Of course, just with the other panelists, you can talk about your leadership journey, but specifically, if you have any practical steps women can take to build and maintain confidence in their abilities, especially in environments where they may be underrepresented or even face imposter syndrome. So I think that most of us, if you're a female in the workforce, have probably heard of imposter syndrome. It's not to say that males cannot experience that as well, of course, but it's pretty common. So just would love you to touch on those things.
Absolutely. Well, good morning from the West Coast. It's a pleasure to be here. I just wanted to share, kind of laying my cards on the table. I'm a mom. I've got 2 young kids right now, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'm in my 6th year here at Oregon State. I was a former high school teacher, and I am living all of this right now. So I'm not an expert. I have expertise. I teach this kind of stuff, but it's a daily struggle for me. So when I saw my name attached to the imposter syndrome, I'm like, oh my gosh. I feel that all the time. But I have thoughts. So a couple things. One is just the idea of imposter syndrome. It's actually more common in high achieving women and women of color. And I think that's because oftentimes high achieving women are in spaces where we're constantly trying to stretch ourselves, stretch our competence, achieve the next thing, go after the next goal. And whenever we're in that zone, that stretch zone, like it feels really uncomfortable. And so it's, I think it's like a 2-sided coin, right? We're pushing boundaries or pushing ourselves, or we're in these kind of marginal spaces, and we're charting unknown waters, which is really scary and really vulnerable. And so I think some of those feelings are very natural. To kind of combat that, one thing that I've been doing is thinking about confidence a little bit more and what that really means to me, self-confidence. And I've come to the idea that confidence is really just knowing yourself, knowing your limits, knowing your skills and your strengths, what I know, what I don't know, where I could grow, and just being very honest about that. And that helps me make decisions, because if I look at the data and I want to, the data of my life, and I say, oh, I want to pursue this goal, I might not even know how to do that thing, but I know myself, I know my processes, I know my skills and my habits, and based on those past experiences, I can almost predict the outcome. Like this last year, I started a little side hustle, because everyone's doing it, right? The economy. But I started a graphic design art gift shop business online. I don't have those skills, but what I do know is I'm a learner. That's my number one strength, and I can learn anything. I'm in education, but now, like, I'm seeing the fruits of that, and I just think we need to give each other more credit. So that's kind of how I think about confidence. In terms of practical skills, anytime you are worried about feeling like an imposter, I think one thing is to go back and look at the data of your life. Like, is there any evidence to substantiate the claim that you're making about yourself? I don't belong here. I'm not good enough. Who am I to say this? Oh, they're going to find out. Like, has that ever happened to you in the past? Or had someone said that to you? And was that even a valid claim? And I think more likely than not, the answer is no. So you got to be like, that's BS. Let's go. I'm going to do this. Let's bring it. So you're going to have to, like, walk through your own thinking. Another practical thing is to find your people. I think this is critical for the workplace. Like, find your inner circle. I have 2 women who are on both sides of the office, and they are my people. Like, we show up, we do our morning chit chat, we look at each other's outfits, and we affirm each other. And I think that's so critical, especially as women, is to affirm each other, but also, like, verbalize what their competence, and make that known. We think it all the time, like, oh, wow, they're really good at this, or, oh, they really made me think about this in this way, but we seldom actually share that. And so sharing that, and validating others is really important. So those are a couple thoughts I had at the moment. So I'll stop talking now. Thanks.
No, I love it. Thank you so much. I love the practical advice of everyone as humans makes up these stories and we exaggerate things. So I think a lot of what we tell ourselves are stories. So actually looking at evidence to see or to combat our imposter syndrome, I think is simple but genius. So I love it. I know that Min has a hard stop in a few minutes. She had a meeting last minute. So I wanted Min to be able to provide a last piece of advice that she would give to aspiring women leaders.
I would say, thank you, Mallory. You have to be yourself, but sometimes we can all use a little bit of tweaking, right? So my piece of advice is be yourself, but also be willing to be the person you want to hire. If you hired someone and they were gossiping, if they were difficult, if they focused on the wrong things, if they were worried about all the little hurdles instead of focusing on, like, let's have fun and do this as a team. If you hired the person that was negative, it would be really difficult as a leader to deal with them. But you have to know that you have to take that responsibility too. You don't want to be focused on the wrong things. And whatever you think about is what you're going to present as. So just my advice is be yourself, but don't be afraid to be able to tweak the things that you could use some improvement on. What do you think that your leader thinks about you right now? Have there been realistic challenges that happen? That's fine. That happens. But then also think of the other part. Is there anything I could eliminate to make myself just someone that's great to work alongside? And I can tell you that everyone looks for that. You can teach skills to anyone, but can you teach someone how to tweak their personality? Maybe indirectly if they wanted to, but it's really hard to change that portion. So that would be my closing statement.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye. I'm glad Min was able to join, even just here at the beginning. Yeah, I think that goes down to just like being honest with yourself, even parts that you may want to build and tweak, right? So just being honest. So looking from a different perspective, I think was really good advice. All right. Well, thank you guys for those first questions. We're going to move on to our next topic, which is work-life balance and boundary setting. So work-life balance, or achieving a balance between professional responsibilities and personal life, is crucial for long-term success and satisfaction. It is about finding harmony in our lives, ensuring that our work commitments do not overshadow our personal well-being. In addition, in leadership roles, especially as women, setting boundaries can be a significant challenge. Boundaries are essential to protect our time, energy, and mental well-being, ensuring we can perform our roles effectively without experiencing burnout. So I wanted to start with Eileen. Eileen, how do you prioritize your time between professional responsibilities and personal advice? And what advice would you give to women struggling to find a balance?
This actually took me a little while to learn how to do. Especially going from, working as a bedside nurse, I worked 3 days a week, had 4 days off, and then going into a position where I was working 5 days a week. And, being in a managerial position, everybody, going in kept telling me, oh, you're responsible for the unit, you're responsible for the unit, which, I am. And then I finally sat back and thought to myself, I am 24/7 accountable, but I'm not 24/7 on call. And once I was able to say that to myself and actually, take my words and put it into practice, I was able to then start prioritizing and able to start scheduling myself. And I sat down with my staff and I told them, I'm like, because it got to the point where my staff was texting me, calling me on my days off. And I was like, guys, this has to stop. Things can be taking place Monday through Friday, scheduling things. Of course, if it's a family emergency or something like that, please reach out to me. But I need my time off. So it has improved immensely. I schedule myself vacations. I post the vacations on when I'm out of town. I'm a newly empty nester. Both my children are in their 20s. So my husband and I are now doing all the little traveling that we never got a chance to when the kids were younger. And every couple months, we schedule a vacation away for a long weekend. We just got back from a cruise. So my calendar is very full and I have to pre-plan stuff, in advance. But setting boundaries is, depending on how big, if you work in the hospital, if you have a unit full of staff, if you have an office of just a few people, definitely having to set those boundaries on, do not call me after such and such time. This is my family time, do not call me on weekends. If you have a large enough staff that you are able to split on call weekends with another unit, to give you a couple weekends off in a row. One thing that I do like here at the hospital is I know that when I leave in the afternoon, we have nursing coordinators that help facilitate with bed placements and issues that can go on in the unit. So after the charge nurse, if she's unable to, rectify a problem, then it goes up to the nursing coordinators and then it will come to me. So, I'm not called every single time with any issues that's going on.
Thank you. I think that's a really good point. I think setting boundaries is under the bucket of work-life balance, which is why I put these two topics together. One thing that our wellness team will share with our employees, whether we're helping them come up with a goal or helping them on work-life balance, is we'll ask them, if I were to ask you, what sort of things mean the most to you in life? The answers are family, friends, pets. And then we say, okay, do those things usually take place outside of work or at work? And almost every time the answer is outside of work, right? So I think an essential part of setting boundaries is making sure that you have the energy and time to dedicate to those things that matter most to us in life, which are usually our family, our friends, those things that take place outside of work. Of course, sometimes there's that blending or a blurred line between family and our coworkers and such, but it kind of puts that into perspective and makes you want to be motivated to set boundaries even more. On the topic of boundaries, Haley, I did want to ask you, because I know you've done a lot of work with boundary setting. Can you share a time when setting boundaries at work helped you achieve better results? And then what strategies do you use to ensure that your boundaries are respected by colleagues and superiors?
Ooh, good question. Yes, I will share all the things. I want to echo something that Eileen shared a minute ago, and she was really describing like boundaries are really just limits. Like that's really all they are. It's like limits that you put between yourself and other people, your job, your other aspects of your life. So creating limits so that you can actually like say yes to the things you want to say yes to and say no to the things you want to say no to. And so one thing that's really helped me is to examine the signs of ignored or crossed boundaries. If you're still kind of new to the boundary creation or reclaiming journey, that's where you have to really start. It's like, when do I feel things like underappreciated, disrespected, guilty, shameful, resentful, bitter? Those are kind of the hallmark emotions that bubble up. And thinking about, okay, when do I feel those? For me, and when I think about my own work, it's really when I miss picking up my kids, if I'm not able to pick up my kids from daycare, and if I have to work in the evenings and I miss making dinner or bedtime, or when I was pumping, like not being able to nurse my baby all day, or the night nurse, like the nighttime feeding. And some of those things like really frustrated me. Or people making last minute requests at work where I'd have to drop other projects that are also a part of my job to do something for someone that could have been done before. And so starting to recognize some of those things where I felt those emotions was really important for me. And so then I kind of started to work backwards. And one thing I've learned through reading a lot about boundaries is the idea of creating policies for yourself. So policies are essentially just rules that you create for your life. Those are boundaries. So finding ways to create those policies to actually prevent some of those future, ignored or crossed boundary feelings and emotions, and then the actual consequences like missing dinner time. So, so I have 2 young kids, and I'm right now I'm really grappling with competing values. Like the values that I hold about motherhood and family life, which are about being home and being present and being emotionally available and being patient, and just being physically present. And the values that I hold about work, like I'm high achieving, I want to pursue greatness, I want to chase something I'm really passionate about, I want to work with colleagues across the country, I want to travel, right? Those 2 things, and my therapist really helped me distinguish this. Those 2 things are in conflict. So what can I do about it? I need to find a way to work with that, like work with them together, or I need to dial back some things. Like I need to reconcile those 2. And so right now that's what I'm trying to work on. One thing that's helped me is more of a mindset thing, and that's about thinking of my career as a book with many chapters. I want to, do all the exciting things in the plot in the first few chapters, right? Because I'm high achieving and I have ideas and things like that. But the chapter that I'm in with my home life is with young littles, and so maybe I need to, wait a little bit to pursue some bigger things in my career so that I can actually be present for the time with the kids when they're young. And that's really freaking hard for me. And I'm struggling every day with it. But it's little things that I'm trying to dial back. So policies that I'm creating now for myself. One, I had a really hard conversation with my supervisor just a few months ago about me not teaching any night classes for the time being. And he said yes to that. So I'm really excited about that. So I don't have to teach you. I've been teaching on Wednesday nights for 8 years. And I know it's just 1 day a week, but that's so precious to me. So having a hard conversation about that. So no more night things. And then with that, I'm saying no to volunteer activities at night. So if students want me to be their club advisor, or they want me to come to this thing or watch their performance, I say no to that. I want to be there. I'd love to see it. I care about them, but family is more important. So if I'm going to say yes to my family, I have to say no to these other things. Another policy I have right now is no new mentoring, which is something I'm very passionate about. But for me, mentoring is very emotionally exhausting. So if I'm going to take on a student, like a graduate student or even an undergrad, I want to do a good job. So I'm not doing that for the time being. And then another thing is I try to block out days or times to work on research. And in academia, there's people always in the hall knocking on your door, wanting your attention. And if I'm actually going to publish, I need concentrated effort. So I've been implementing a policy where Thursdays are research, and people have to pretend that I'm not here. And it's kind of a fun joke around the office, like, okay, Haley's not here on Thursday. So I'm communicating that policy to my colleagues so they can respect the boundary. So for me, it's been these little tweaks. Well, it's been finding out what I'm really passionate about. What do I want to protect? And then I do have to reconcile, have to make sacrifices, but I have to be okay with that. I can't do it all. And I don't care. I mean, I care. I know people say you can, but I just, there's not enough hours in the day to do amazing things in all aspects of your life. Maybe you're a superhero. I'm not. I am very flawed, but trying to figure out how to reconcile everything and just at the end of the day, feel good about what I've done and be okay with that and not kind of hold on to resentment or guilt.
I love that. Thank you, Haley. Yeah, it sounds like setting boundaries really. I mean, direct communication, being honest with yourself and what you want in life and what your values are, I think aligns with boundary setting. I liked the creating your own personal policies. So as like a takeaway for those that are joining us or watching this today, I would invite you guys to think about that. Think about what you want as your own personal policies. Maybe even share it in the chat if you already have some, to help keep those boundaries and ensure that your colleagues respect those boundaries. So I really like that. On this topic of work-life balance and boundary setting, Laura, Eileen, does anybody else have other thoughts or comments on this topic?
Yeah, I would offer up just a couple of thoughts to kind of go along with what Haley and Eileen already said. And that is, if you're in a leadership role or if you're contributing to leadership in your organization, I think you have the capacity to some extent to really build a culture of acceptance of balance. And I say that because I feel like in the different chapters of my life, as Haley put it, I've experienced different cultures that really either supported or didn't my ability to balance and set and keep some meaningful boundaries. And a lot of that that has been really positive for me has been demonstrated by my colleagues. And so it wasn't just lip service about work-life balance and we do such a good job in this department or we do such a good job at this institution or organization, but the people around me were really demonstrating that and almost holding me accountable to aligning with that culture of balance, right? There's an expectation that, you're not at work all the time. And you are clear about boundaries and you are prioritizing, what must get done at work and what needs to but can wait and what your family needs are, or if you're a caregiver, whatever that is, right? Family life is different for everybody, or outside work life is different for everybody. And so I would just, encourage you to think about ways that you can contribute to building that culture of expecting people to have a balanced life.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially if you are in that leadership position and you do have the power to change the culture and practice what you preach. So, yeah, it's great. Thanks, guys. And Eileen, did you have something you'd like to add?
I was just gonna kind of add on to that, when we do, like even just for scheduling, since we're scheduling a unit for 24 hours a day, we tell my staff that, family comes first, you come first. Try not to, if you feel that you're working 3 to 4 days in a row is too much for you, at least, balance out your schedule a little bit better, because you have to take care of yourself. That always comes first. And some people, are like, oh, I need the money, I need the money, I need the money. And then they end up working themselves into sickness, and you sometimes have to step back as a leader and kind of evaluate, your staff. I take a personal interest in all of my staff, and I have to see, hey, you look a little bit tired, a little peek at how are things going, come in, let's sit and talk, and then we sit down and redo their schedules. You have to always take care of yourself first and tell them to prioritize themselves as that.
Yeah.
And Eileen, gosh, I just want to applaud that out loud because, Haley mentioned her therapist. The first time I ever sought out a therapist was because my boss asked me how I was.
Wow.
Right. And so for somebody in a leadership position, or even if it's not titled, right, a mentor position, to be assertive in asking, are you okay? And how can I help? Or what do you need that you are not attending to right now? And what resources do we have to offer? What resources can I help you find? Gosh, that's just so powerful.
Oh yeah. I mean, we try to hear, foster that we're one big family. And, there are some staff members that, are very closed and don't want to share too much. And there are some that, I have a couch in my office. We call it the comfy couch. And some people will come in and they'll share more, but we have the resources here that people do need, or some people might need. And, I feel that in a leadership role, it is our responsibility to offer these roles and help people find the means that they need.
Yeah. Definitely. And this is actually a perfect segue into the next topic, which is mental health. So, and you guys mentioned like checking in as a leader, checking in on your staff's mental health too. That's, a part of self-care, but also, or that's a part of mental health and being a good leader, but also going back to that self-care part that you talked about, Eileen. I want to kind of focus on that for this topic. So as leaders, especially women leaders, the pressure to perform and deliver can be immense, and it often leads to stress and burnout, as many of us know. So maintaining mental health is vital for sustaining our effectiveness, ensuring that we can support our teams and like be that mentor and leader. So I want to start with Laura, but we can open the floor for for you, Eileen and Haley. But Laura, I wanted to know how you manage stress and prevent burnout in your leadership role and what mental health practices you've incorporated into your routine.
Yeah, so first, let me just say, I am not an expert in this topic. And I feel like this is something that you definitely learn and improve over time. But I think one thing that I have recognized, at least in my own journey, is that you have to be intentional about it. I think that you really have to do the work of recognizing where you are and how your mental health is. And from there, take steps, figure out what those steps are that you need to help your own self. I think it is such incredible timing that we're doing this right now because I've been glued to the Olympics, if any of you have as well. And I think, gosh, there's so much pressure on Simone Biles, right? Like there's so much pressure on that young woman. And I have a really great admiration. And I think there's just no better example right now of somebody who, just recognized that she needed to care for her own mental health, but then because of her personality, and perhaps we're not all of that personality, then shared about it. And I think both of those things are really, really important. And I found that they are important in my own journey, recognizing where I am and what I need to do. But then I am of the personality that I am really transparent. I share that very openly with those around me, particularly my students and especially my graduate students. Especially those who have ambition to go into academia and are looking for a faculty position at some point, talking about my practices and being honest about when I'm not in a great place and I need some time, or we can't have our regular meeting because I'm just not going to be helpful to you right now. I am active. I think that's one of the things that I do to maintain my mental health. I work out, I run, I try to run at least one half marathon a year. And so all the training that entails gets me outside and on the road a lot. My husband is a daily worker outer. We lift weights. But I found that I needed more than that. And so towards the beginning of this year, I started meditating and using the Headspace app. I had been using a running app, and some of the guided runs had the creator of Headspace on as the voiceover in the guided run. And I just found that the practices that they were incorporating in those guided runs were something that I really valued. And as I ran and I thought through, the prompts and what they were talking about, I just took a lot out of it. Not from the mental aspect, even more than the physical sometimes. And so I found that was a wonderful app that has helped me. And it's something that is in my power to control, right? When you feel like you have a tight schedule and maybe you can't have a consistent, here's the time or here's the day or whatever that looks like, I found that has been very helpful for me in trying to maintain that.
Yeah, thank you. And this topic, mental health, really aligns with our last topic, which is just general wellness. So I kind of want to tie those together and open this for all three of you guys. So wellness is not just physical health, but it's also emotional health, it's mental health, it's spiritual well-being and more. So it's important for leaders to adopt these practices to maintain a healthy and balanced life, which is, crucial for effective leadership. I think that mental health ties into self-care, self-care ties into just wellness in general. Even watching this panel discussion today is like a form of wellness and self-care, like building yourself, developing yourself, and that sort of thing. So I kind of want to expand the topic of mental health to general wellness as well. How do you guys define wellness, and why is it important for leaders? And maybe what wellness practices you guys have found to be most effective? I know Laura mentioned being active, and then even recognizing that she needed more, and trying meditation as well. I definitely encourage trying new things to find what you like and what you don't like. So yeah, I kind of want to open the floor. Haley or Eileen, if you guys have an answer for that.
Well, for myself, I know like when I come home from work, my first stop is I rescue animals. I have 4 dogs I've rescued. I've rescued donkeys this past year. And I have cats. So I go home, spend time with the donkeys, weather permitting, feed them, cuddle with them. And then I go and let the dogs out. And I just sit by the pool. I live out in West Gilchrist County out in Newberry. And I just listen to the birds. I do little quiet meditation. I'll sit out there depending on the weather, for about an hour, hour and a half, and I just kind of like decompress. Even sometimes on my way home from work, I don't listen to music. It's just quiet, just kind of work things through my head, and just let it out. By the time I get home from work, it's all I just completely let it all go. So I don't take anything home with me. I have a therapist. talk to my therapist, the best thing. One thing also I think that helps is, especially in nursing, there's a group of us that get along together. We talk about stuff together. If we've had a bad day, if we've lost a patient, we're able after the incident, we talk about it. We try not to let it all build up inside of us. One thing when we interview new people for our unit, one thing that Min had just said was we can teach skills. And we can, especially for new grads or somebody who's going from to a higher level of care, to increase their education. One thing that we can't teach is compassion. And we always wanted to make sure that somebody's a very good fit for our team that we have here, that somebody's going to be good with our family here. And one thing that we do ask is, what do you do for self-care? What do you do outside of work for yourself? And we also ask what kind of spirit animal you are and what you're going to bring for potluck. So we feel that those are important things, to get to know personalities. But we want to make sure you're going to be a good fit for us. But, self-care is important. What do? Do you get out and hike? Do you, way you relieve stress? Because, being in medicine, either from being with children and newborns all the way up into the ICU, it's very stressful at different levels. And you have to be able to have a way to release that, because if you don't, it builds up over time. And yes, you lead to burnout. I mean, we saw this throughout the entire world during COVID. And we lost so many good nurses who just, basically just tapped out of the field because they just couldn't handle it anymore.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is like finding what works for you, because you guys, even just between Eileen, you and Laura, you guys had very different answers to what is self-care means to you. So I think reflecting, being honest with yourself, like we mentioned before, and not only what you need as a leader, but what you need to take care of yourself. I think a key point was like allowing yourself that quiet time, even utilizing a car ride from work or to work, to just decompress can make the world of a difference. Nature, I mean, there's so much research behind the power of nature and mental well-being. And then the other thing that stuck out to me was social wellness. So that's a part of self-care, is making sure that we're not feeling lonely or isolated. And whether it's bonding with your coworkers or having someone else to talk to or vent to, that's extremely important. Humans are social beings and we're not meant to be alone. So all of those things definitely stuck out to me. So thank you. And Haley.
Yeah, I think for wellness for me is being in a space where I can show up according to my values and my goals. So like being physically, spiritually, mentally in a space where I can be authentic in many ways. And I've realized, which is so obvious, but like no one's going to take care of me. I have to make the decision to take care of me. I have to make the decision to own my wellness. And so that kind of responsibility has made me shift my practices and be a little bit more proactive. I mean, even just recently, like this is TMI, I don't know any of you, but postpartum, my cycle was very off, and I emailed my gynecologist saying this, and they just wanted to put me on a medication. I was like, I don't know about that. So I switched doctors, and all of a sudden we're doing testing, and I'm revealing like I have insulin resistance, and we're doing all these, this plan, and we're doing more testing, and I feel so much more empowered to fit, and there's better results to tackle my physical health. So that is such a gift, and just being able to advocate for myself with my doctor has been really important. On the spiritual side, my faith is the #1 priority in my life. So I have to really nurture my spirituality and my faith. And so I have a lot of practices around that, and I have a spiritual director. And so making sure that that's always the #1 priority for me. And then other little things, and we can talk more about hacks later, but just I'm on a huge decluttering and outsourcing kick. I mean, my home is fairly minimal. I mean, you learn about this idea of mental load, and you just want to become a minimalist. because we have so many things that we're thinking about and so many things that we're juggling. Well, I'm on a mission to just like eliminate some of the balls that I'm juggling to begin with. So massive decluttering. My wardrobe is very minimal. I mean, my hanging stuff is like this big. I wear more of a uniform to work so that the decisions are gone there. I mean, we're outsourcing things as much as we can, as much as we're able to pay, and making sacrifices. Like we don't eat out, but we have someone come clean our house. And so that's the sacrifice. You know, I only do grocery delivery now. Like I don't go to the grocery store. I can't do that right now. So outsourcing and minimizing has been really helpful for me. And then really prioritizing community, making sure that I'm building that in. And the way that we do that in our house is we host people. It's just much easier for people to come to our house than going out because we don't have to pack all the stuff and the toys and the diapers. Like we just have people over there. And yeah, they're our friends and our house is not perfect, but that's how it is. And so kind of owning that and figuring out, what do I need to really thrive? And then trying to incorporate that into my daily life has been really helpful.
Great, thank you. There's lots of validating comments in the chat if you guys want to read that throughout. But yeah, anything else that you guys have on the topic of mental health or wellness, words of wisdom or thoughts?
Number one thing is just remember you're not alone out of anything, if somebody, especially as a leader, try to identify, with your staff, that, and just reiterate to them that they're not alone, that there's resources there for them. My staff, I'm very open with them in my past, how I got to where I'm at, and stuff like that. And they look at me and they're like, why are you sharing? Or I can't believe you're sharing this with me. I'm like, everything in my past has made me what I am today. And I learned from all that. I have no regrets in anything. And, we learn from everything. So as long as, I believe honesty, being open with them, and, I've told them, hey, this type of therapy worked for me. This type of therapy didn't work for me, and have those experiences, and tell them, I'll work with them on scheduling so they can go away for the weekend. Just open communication helps out a lot. And, trying to tell them what they can, options we have for them, just communicating, I think is the biggest thing.
Yeah, definitely. You are not alone. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Those are some of like probably the 4 most powerful words that you can tell someone, especially someone who's struggling mentally. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Okay, so well, one, thank you guys so much for answering our topic questions. Now we have the rest of this time until 2 o'clock to answer questions submitted by the audience. I know we have a few in the question and answer function, but I do have some pre-submitted questions that I wanted to start with. Early on in this panel, someone mentioned mentorship. I think Eileen, I think you mentioned mentorship. So I wanted to read these 2 questions that were pre-submitted and open floor for anyone who wants to share a response. So first, what role has mentorship played in your journey to finding a balance between being approachable and assertive? And then the other question is, how can women find supportive mentors who can guide them through these challenges? So, how do you find a mentor, and how has a mentorship helped you become an effective leader?
I found my mentors by working with them, in all honesty. I just kind of kept my eyes open, and then I approached them. When I was finishing up my master's, I needed mentors and preceptors. to finish off the program. And I approached people who I had seen over time and what they had achieved. And I liked their styles in either educating or in leadership. And I approached them myself. I've also, with, you said, the assertiveness, or, how we become leaders and how, we go through our day. I kind of take that, I don't want to say like personally, but I've been told over many times, like I've been intimidating, so like the assertive, intimidating. And then finally my daughter, bless my daughter, she's 20, almost 23 years old, said, Mom, I don't think it's more of intimidating, but you're very self-confident. Like I can walk into a situation and it's more of self-confidence. You walk in very calm and you know exactly what you're doing. And that takes time to do too. You walk into a new role or you walk into an emergency and stuff like that. And it did take mentorship with that also, because, you're the new nurse in the unit and you have no idea what's going on and you're standing back in the corner, but when you walk into a situation and you're, as a nurse, I can just speak as a nurse in the role, because I basically, as an adult, that's all I've been as a nurse, 28 years. You're assigned a preceptor. You go into a unit, you're assigned a preceptor, this is what you do. And then once you go out on your own and you start working, and you're working with your peers and you kind of say, okay, I like how this nurse does stuff and this nurse does stuff. And then you find your nurse who is a stronger nurse, more experienced nurse, and you befriend that nurse. And then you watch that nurse, you tag on, it's like, hey, can you help me with something? And that's how, some places can have mentorship and you can reach out themselves. We here at Shands, we just started a new pilot where we have group mentorship. So our unit in particular, we have two more experienced nurses running a mentorship where all of our newer nurses are in there. Management has nothing to do with it. We don't assign the mentors, and they mentor each other, which is wonderful because, like I said, management leadership is completely out of it. They speak freely. They use that opportunity to use it for educational means, and they help each other out. And it's peer-to-peer mentorship. So there's all different ways you can find different mentors and within each other.
Yeah. Thank you.
I would tag on to that to
Yeah.
say, recognizing that it's probably not just a mentor, right? Eileen talked about a group of people, right? And even research really supports this idea that having a network, a support network for mentorship is really effective. This panel is focused on women in leadership. There's a lot of research that supports the idea that women to women mentorship is really important too. And I have been really fortunate in my professional life to have both male and female mentors. I would say that, some of my early mentors were male because I'm in a male dominated field. I was really fortunate that my graduate advisor was married to a very strong woman also in academia and had 3 daughters. And so he saw me, right? And he saw the unique challenges that I was either facing or liable to face as a woman in a college of ag and academia. And as I've moved through my roles as a faculty member, I've been really fortunate to have female mentors that have really given, time and attention and effort to helping grow me. And I think the one thing that I would say is, as you're thinking about mentors, there's probably a mentor for the different things that you're looking for, right? You're unlikely to find that all in one person. And I kind of had to grow my courage when I got here to UF because there was a faculty member here that I very much admired and respected. And I didn't just want her as a mentor, I needed her as a mentor. And so that first question of, what role has mentorship played in your journey of finding balance between being approachive and assertive? We've used the word authenticity a lot today. And as a woman in leadership, authenticity is really important, right? To be who you are and lead how you lead. And the one kind of maybe funny thing that I will say about this mentor in particular is throughout my professional career, I have learned what I want to be and what I don't want to be. And so there's a lot of things about her and her mannerisms and her communication and her approach that work for her. But it can be a little bit abrasive. And so I learned, right, that balance of like, that's not my style. I can accept that, right, from her because I know her and I've gotten to know her very well, but I know that that's not my style. And so being able to balance, like, what does this look like for me? How can I be assertive in the way that others need me to be, to say the things that they need to hear or not want to hear? Because that, I think, is the most fruitful piece of mentorship, is somebody who's willing to say the things that you need to hear, not the things that you want to hear. But also be approachable so that I am able to say those things, right? And so it really certainly is that balance. And you just have to figure out what it is for you.
I think that's a really good point. That sort of answers a different question that was submitted, which was, they said that they are an aspiring transformational leader. And they asked, what do you do to combine like a kind nature while also, gaining respect, sort of thing. So I think that kind of ties into that. So making sure that you're approachable, but like asking the information that you need to know. So it's a balance. And I think learning from mentors can be really important, and you figure out what works for you and your own personality and that sort of thing. Any other comments on mentors or mentorship?
I'll share one thought. One thing I've learned over the years is kind of looking at the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. Like the mentors, their role is to kind of guide you and coach you, give advice and feedback. And that's a really, really important role. And I would echo what Laura was saying about you need different people for different things. And then sponsors are people who are going to be in your network and speak highly of you, or make connections for you, or recommend you for something. And I think sometimes those can be very different people. So we have to be strategic, especially as women, if we're in a male-dominated field, or if there's a culture of maybe there's fewer women. We have to be strategic in getting those sponsors. So it sounds kind of sneaky or manipulative. I don't think it is. I think if you do it with good intention, you think, okay, who has influence here? Or, who has a really big network, and how can I tap into that? So, strategically connecting with those people so they know your name, they know your competencies, and then they can speak to that if and when an opportunity presents itself. So building relationships with that in mind, I think could help us achieve our goals and have larger networks.
Thank you. I think that shows the importance of networking. I know, like, that's what everyone always talks about, but it's so important. So networking, being yourself, putting yourself out there, and maybe doing something that you normally wouldn't do or that you're afraid of, you're always going to meet new people, and you might get those sponsors even organically without even trying, just by meeting new people and being yourself. So yeah, I think that's really good advice. Thanks, guys. I'd like to move on. I've got like a few more questions here, but I'd like to do some from the chat today. I know that Haley, you answered one, so I'm just going to read that out loud. Someone asked, Haley, how do you find your inner circle when starting a new job, especially if they already have their own group? And Haley said, full honesty, I was part of the hiring committee for the two women in my inner circle. I saw qualities in them: empathetic, driven, humble, clever, positive. That made me say, I want to work with them. I see qualities in people that I want, and I make friends with them, invite them for coffee, check in with them, offer help however you can. Sounds creepy, but it works. I tell people this all the time. It's like making friends as an adult. It's like you're almost asking them on a date. I feel like you got to go out. You just got to do it. You find someone that you click with, like, hey, it was really fun talking with you. I'd love to like get coffee sometime. So I think sometimes just being okay with being the first person to say something can turn into friendships and an inner circle and networking. So yeah. I'm gonna have Abby read one or two of the other questions from the submitted questions today.
Well, first, thank you guys so much. Thank you to our panelists for all of the wonderful insights you guys have shared with us today. And we have some great questions in the chat. So I would like to ask you guys this one and just open the floor. How do you motivate yourself when your own support system?
Yeah, I've been looking at this since it popped up in the Q&A, Abby. So thanks for picking this one. And I think that's really tough. I think feeling that way is really tough. And I guess without having more information about the context of where this question is coming from, I think I would offer up, think about if you really are the only person in your support system, and maybe you're in a new place or in a new job, and that can feel very lonely. And so where can you find that support system or bring some of that support system that you have had with you? I think that motivation and support are kind of two different things. Not kind of, they're two different things, right? And so what is it that you're missing or looking for? If it's motivation, I think there are perhaps other questions that you need to ask, right? Like why am I not motivated? What do I wish I was motivated to do? Or what do I wish that I was doing that I'm not doing? And I think that can lead you in lots of different directions to answering those questions. And then again, this idea of, if it's just, I don't have a support system here, and I've felt that. I grew up in New Mexico, and I have progressively moved east throughout my life. And I think, it really hit home when we had our kiddo, and I felt very alone. And very, without a support system. And the reality was, that I really just needed to accept the help that was around me that I wasn't recognizing because it didn't look like the traditional help that I was used to, right? It wasn't my family and it didn't look traditional. And so it really took me thinking, what is that system and where are those people who are really here and present and showing care and support and love for me and my family, and just being open to that and allowing, sometimes that takes a lot of vulnerability to accept that help, especially if it doesn't look like what you think it should look like or what you anticipated it looking like.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that's a great point, having to kind of open your mind, take a step back, reevaluate the support that you do have. And I like that point of asking those additional questions. If it is the feeling of lacking motivation, asking those additional questions for yourself. So thank you, Laura, for sharing that. There's another question, and this one was directed to men, but I feel like we could open it up to you all here. And this question is, how did you step out of your comfort zone and take the risks to jump into a new career path? So if you have any experience with this, I would love to hear your thoughts.
A lot of antacids. um, no, I mean, I can just say going, because, I went from, even just going from different levels of nursing care, it's stressful, there's no way around it. Having support, reaching out and finding that mentor in the area that you're going into did help. Because I went from a med surge to a trauma ICU, a level 1 trauma ICU in South Florida. And then I came up here, went to another ICU, and then I was a stat nurse, and then into leadership roles. there was a little GI upset a couple times, but definitely having the support, finding to talk about it, definitely not keeping things bottled up inside, doing some education, don't go in, blindsided, read up about it, making sure that it's a good fit, does help. But definitely mentorship and finding your niche of people within the unit that you're going into, because that definitely does help.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I see we have a couple more questions that have popped in the chat here. I do want to go back to one that's been here, and I think Haley, you spoke a little bit about this in the beginning, and this one is geared towards managing family. So the question is, how do you manage family, specifically with small children, while in a leadership role? I find it almost impossible having a working household with the Alachua County school infrastructure.
Oh, I feel you. This is an ongoing struggle for me. That's been the last couple of years, there's been many car rides home, calling my mom in tears. Am I doing the right thing? Should I stop working? Like existential challenges. So I don't have all the answers, and I think it's important to just hold space for that and recognize the challenge of working motherhood, working parenthood, and kind of the systemic challenges that we face and how we respond or not respond to them. Yeah, looking back, I think I should have completely overhauled the way that I approached maternity leave and coming back to work. It was really dumb, and resulted in lots of medication and postpartum depression and all the things. For me, it's I'm right now, I'm trying to work on decentralizing my career. And I don't know if that's what people want to hear because it's about women in leadership, but trying to let go of the idea that my career is my only identity. That was definitely something that I clung to for a long time till I became a mom. And trying to slowly let go of that and almost test the waters a little bit. Like, what would happen if I didn't answer the email right away? Nothing. It's fine. Like, it's going to be okay. What would happen if I just was more present with my family? So there's that mindset work that's really important. But also, I mean, the hacks and all the things, like it takes a lot of discipline for me and a lot of systems for me and my family. And I mentioned a couple of them, outsourcing and a paring down and opting out of a lot of things. We don't do organized activities. I'm postponing that for as long as possible as a family, so we can protect our time at home and weekend time. Opting out of volunteering. We're really, really paring down right now while we're a younger family. Saying no to big, a lot of our families, we have no family up here. Everyone's back in California. So we don't have that kind of traditional support structure Laura was talking about. So saying no to going home for Thanksgiving for 2 days and spending, $3,000 on tickets, like, no, we're not doing that. So kind of goes back to the boundaries piece a little bit as well. And then having really hard conversations with your supervisor and your boss. And saying, look, I want to stay here. I'm committed to this work. I'm passionate about this work. Here's what's not working. I have some solutions. What do you think about these? And that was this past year for me, is coming to my supervisor and having some hard conversations a few times. And it was awkward in the office for quite a while. But trying to be a part of that solution and saying, I want to be here. I want to stay here. But for this season of life, like, this is not working for me. What can we do to adjust things? Because I can't do it all. And that takes a lot of risk, I think. But at the end of the day, I have to think, like, that risk is worth it, because at the end of the day, I'm protecting my family. So having that courage has been a big part of this journey for me.
Thank you, Haley. I'm going to hop in here as we are at about 5 minutes left. I see that Laura, you might be typing an answer to one of the questions in the chat. So I'm gonna let you write that answer while we finish this last question here, which is real quick, if you guys could choose, what's the hardest thing you find about being in leadership?
This is an easy one for me. It's letting go of the need to be liked.
Ah,
It's a flaw. It's a personality struggle for me. There's a lot of history there, but we don't have to get into that. But for me, it's letting go of the desire to be liked by people. I can logic my way through things. I have the capacity to be a leader. I know the strategies. I know the behaviors. It's that need to be liked that can skew that. So for me, it's letting go of that.
I would have to agree with Haley on that one too. Yeah, I walk in the morning, say good morning. Everybody gives me a hug. You know, we're like I said, we're a big family here on our unit. It's when I am having to do the disciplinary things and no longer liked, you know, that's the hardest part about leadership that I find.
yeah. And Laura, if you could choose a hardest thing that you find about leadership.
I think the hardest thing about leadership is from a perfectionist or a, A-type personality standpoint, reconciling that you're gonna make mistakes. And that at the end of the day, leadership means making decisions and taking accountability. And because we are human, they aren't always going to be right. You're not always going to make everybody happy. And so I think, maybe very similar to what Haley said, right? Like this need to be liked is very difficult to overcome and balance with. You have a responsibility as a leader, and being liked is not that responsibility. Now, you can do it with empathy, right? And building relationships and maintaining relationships is important. But you have a responsibility to people and for people in that role.
Definitely. Thank you, guys. I'm just going to read this last question here and I'll read your answer as well, Laura, and then we'll wrap up. It says, how do you move on from rejection and continue to work at the same place as if nothing happened? So they gave an example of what happened. And Laura said, so difficult because we need feedback. It may be that your supervisor or mentor may not be at liberty to share more specifics. HR has a lot of wonky rules. We often err on the side of caution if we don't know what we can share or what we cannot, which is very true. Also be clear about why you want feedback. Is it to grow, learn, and improve, or is it to validate a frustration or suspicion you have? If it's the second, perhaps the healthier route is to let go. Second, decide if it's a hill you want to die on. And if you're in a position to do good things and make a difference, then it's okay if you're still there. I love that answer.
So I know we're almost short on time, but I want to offer a little anecdote about the hill you want to die on. I've mentioned my graduate advisor previously, and in my previous role at a different institution, I was in a situation where I felt very disrespected and brushed aside by some administrators. And I called my graduate advisor knowing that he would tell me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. And he thankfully answered in the moment. And he said, listen, don't be a Joseph Warren. Long pause. And I said, who is Joseph Warren? And he said, exactly. He would be a notable founding father, but he died on the wrong hill, and now nobody knows who he is. So is this a hill you are willing to die on? Is it that important to you? Or is this a hill where you take the political and the social capital that you have built and you put it back in your pocket and you save it for something that is more meaningful? And he was right? It took somebody who could tell me that to tell me that. But really, gosh, that's a hard situation when you feel very rejected And so you just kind of have to pause and take a breath and say, is this something so important to me that I'm going to hang on to it and pursue it? Or am I finding value and good in what I'm doing where I'm at? And can I instead hang on to that?
Thank you. I thank you for that anecdote. I think it kind of brings it all together. The last question in the Q&A, I'm actually going to have all of you send me an email with any of resources or books. I know you shared some in the chat, but if you guys will email me resources or books that have helped guided your leadership journeys, or even videos, I'd like to compile that and send that afterwards. I want to thank you all so much, to our panelists for their valuable insights, and to our audience for your participation and your questions. This is our first time hosting a sort of panel discussion like this, so I'd love to hear the feedback. After the Zoom meeting closes, you all should get access to a post survey, and then I'll email you a recording of this and additional resources.